guys, welcome to another episode of Keeping Up with the Taylorians. My name is Summer and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm currently studying Bachelor in Digital Media Production and I'm representing Taylor's University Student Council alongside with another moderator of ours.
Hi, my name is Zili and I'm currently pursuing a degree in the Bachelor of Laws. Nice to meet everyone today.
For today's episode, we are going to talk about feminism. We're so happy to get to invite two amazing speakers from Taylor's Girl Up Club. Perhaps you guys want to introduce yourselves, starting from Hessa?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Hessa. I am Girl Up's Vice Events Director and I'm a first year psych major.
All right. Hey everyone. My name is Shivakaamini, but y'all can call me Shiva, and I'm the Vice President of Taylor's Girl Up, and I'm a second year psych student. So yeah.
Okay, thank you guys for being here with us to share your thoughts on our topic today. Before we get into our topic, let's play a small game session. So this game session, we will have 2 rounds where we name an item or a person according to the topic that I will give later, until someone cannot name it within 5 seconds. Is everyone okay?
Yes, let's do it.
So let's go on with our first category, empowered woman. So any celebrities, politician, activists that you guys want to name it. Okay? Let's start with me. 3, 2, 1. Queen Elizabeth II.
Beyonce.
Michelle Obama.
Lady Gaga.
What? Oprah Winfrey.
Jane Fonda.
Emma Watson.
Maya Angelou.
Ellen DeGeneres.
Greta Thunberg.
Megan Fox.
Madonna.
Angelina Jolie.
Tracy Ellis Ross.
Oh my god.
Really?
Right?
Okay, Blake Lively.
Alicia Keys.
Indira Gandhi.
Okay.
She didn't don't have it. She lost. Okay, so it's okay. Next round. Okay, songs that empowers equality.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, starts with me. 3, 2, 1. The Man, Taylor Swift.
Queen by Jessie J.
We Are the World.
Girl on Fire. Alicia Keys.
Most Girls by Hailey Steinfeld.
I'm Coming Out by Diana Ross.
Born This Way, Lady Gaga.
Who Says by Selena Gomez.
Run the World by Beyonce.
Fall in Line by Christina Aguilera and Demi Lovato. That's the one, yeah.
Oh my god.
We Are the Champion, Queen.
Good as Hell, Lizzo.
Salute, Lilo Mix.
I'm Every Woman, Chaka Khan.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Don't Need a Man, Pussycat Dolls.
Ooh, okay, alright, okay.
That's My Girl with Harmony.
Oh. Man, I Feel Like a Woman, Shania Twain. Is that her name? Yeah, it's a name.
Never Say Never, Justin Bieber.
Really Don't Care, Demi Lovato.
Woman Like Me, Lilo Mix.
Who I Am, Latasha.
Okay, guys, let's start the podcast.
Okay, I can go on with music. Okay, that's like.
All right, that was a very fun session. Let's move on with going in depth with our topic today, feminism. Okay, you all know that feminism is gender equality, human rights and everything. Like, what do you think is the biggest misconception of feminism?
Well, I think, I feel like if I could have $1 every time somebody actually has a misconception about feminism, I would be rich by now. But honestly, like I think the most basic and common ones are definitely the fact that they're like, oh, feminists are like man-eating, like they're man-haters. They want to have
Anti-man.
yes, we want to have a superior like gender, we want to put men down. But truly at the core, I think feminism is, first of all, having the liberty and ability to choose, and second of all, wanting for equality for everyone regardless of gender. And feminism is basically not even about gender or women. It's about breaking down a really, really problematic social system in where no group has the same equal rights as one another, and that's basically in the end and in the long run like hurting everyone basically. So
yeah, I feel like a lot of misconception about feminism, one of them is about like women should have more rights than men, which is untrue, right, Hessa?
Yeah, 100%. It's, like what Shiva said, it's about equality at the end of the day. It's about leveling the playing field and not like putting someone on a pedestal higher up than anyone else.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like other than all those misconceptions, feminism has changed so much over time, right? Like, can you guys share with us on how do you guys think feminism has changed over time?
Okay, well, technically there are 4 like waves, but there's actually like a very strong continuity between each wave, and like the theories that kind of pass down from each wave are like missions that are like, how do I say this, like they were updated missions of what we want to achieve in the long run. And so like the first wave started off in like 1848, the 1800s to like 1920s, and it started off with the women's suffrage movement, which is basically like the right to vote, and was very politically driven. And this was basically, it was a huge impact on the universal suffrage movement and not just in the US. And then because of this, there were more opportunities for women to choose between career and family, which was really important. And then we moved on to the second wave, which is from 1963 to 1980s. And this one was more, it kind of cared more about like the casual and systemic sexism that was really ingrained into society, which basically is like the belief that a woman's highest and only purpose is to be a domestic and like decorative item. And a lot of the social standards at that time kind of reinforced that belief. And there were also a lot of like racism between the classes as well. That was kind of like what the wave was about. And this wave was also where the ideas of like radical feminism came about, where like feminists hate men and they're bitter and they like want to throw us down, they don't care. And then we're coming to the wave 3, and between wave 3 and wave 4 there's no actually like definite line, but basically wave 3 was the wave where there's increased awareness on the overlapping categories, which is also known as intersectionality, which is basically like facing discrimination or something, with also including other factors such as like race, class, as mentioned, gender, sexuality, ability, socioeconomic status. And it had a more of an emphasis on the global feminist movement. And also this kind of also like dwindled down into wave 4, which is what we're currently in as well. And wave 4 is basically all the incorporations of wave 3, but it's more focused on the interwebs and the cyberspace and new media technologies, as well as online advocacy. But I think at the moment, like, feminism is definitely inherently like intersectional feminism, which is basically like a splinter version of movements that are taking place simultaneously. And for example, in Malaysia, I know that we've practiced a lot of like modesty feminism, because there was a phase, especially in wave 2 and 3, that like in between, that we talked about a lot of sexual liberation. And in turn, it made it seem like women who chose modesty were caged or prevented from being who they are. So yeah, I think that's basically where we are at the moment right now.
Well, so it seems like feminism really has changed a lot over time to bring equality to everyone regardless of our gender. So like what you said just now, speaking of equality, there's a belief that race discrimination is faced by all people with colored skin, whereas sex discrimination is faced by all women. So, however, the concept of intersectionality suggests that people are often disadvantaged by multiple sources of oppression, like what you said just now: race, class, gender identity, sexual orientation, and other identity markers. So, with regards to the status of Malaysia being a multicultural country, to what extent do you think that intersectionality is applicable in Malaysia? Why?
Okay, maybe I can take this one.
Yeah.
So, yes, it is super applicable. And I think in order to understand why that is, it is important to first understand intersectionality. So the official wiki definition for it is that intersectionality is an analytical framework for understanding how aspects of a person's social and political identities combine to create different modes of discrimination or privilege. So when we talk about intersectional feminism, it is essentially the understanding that there is an interlocking, or rather an intersections of different levels of oppression or discrimination within a person's identity. And the more intersections that are at play in a person's identity, the more marginalized they are. So as you've mentioned, Malaysia is a very multicultural country, but there are also majority groups and minority groups existing in our society.
Yeah.
So for example, a woman from a minority race group would face discrimination for their race and for being a woman, whereas a woman from a majority group would only face discrimination for being a woman. And so the woman without the intersection of race would not have to face the disadvantage of racism. And this example that I'm giving you right now, it's only with the intersection of race. There can be many more intersections at play on top of race. There's discrimination can be on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status and ability, and all these intersections on their own are already subject to its own form of discrimination. So you can imagine what would happen to individuals and groups of people who have multiple intersections as part of their identity. And essentially, it is unfair to function in a way that sort of discards these experiences or equate them to experiences of a majority group or people with less intersections.
So according to the civil rights activist Kimberly, who coined intersectionality in 1889, the aim of intersectionality is not to change power dynamics and cultural structures, but to get rid of the existing power dynamics altogether. So in your opinion, how can we utilize intersectionality in Malaysia? And is the current education system in Malaysia adequate for this?
Okay, that's like a two-parter, but let's break it down. Okay, I think in Malaysia, from a young age, our education system, or just how we are as a culture, we definitely talk about unity and perpaduan and living harmoniously and all that thing. So to a certain degree, we do take intersections of race and socioeconomic status into consideration, but as a whole, we don't take a lot of we're not very inclusive in terms of people's choice of gender or sexuality or gender identity and things of that sort. And I think in terms of education, I feel we don't have that background. And the only way for us to overcome it is so first of all, check your privilege at the door, learn in what spectrum do you stand in and how you can provide to people that don't have the same privilege as you. Try to listen and see where they're coming from and how you can make a difference or make the change that they are unable to do because of the discrimination they face, possibly. And if that doesn't work, try to educate yourself, try to see, try to just look from their perspective as opposed to just having a one single narrowed vision of what is actually happening around you.
Yeah, to understand it more, right? And support one another as equals.
Yeah. And I think there's always room for improvement, but I think it's time for us to be more open and inclusive in the way we think and the way we view the world and how we interact with the world, especially, I think. So yeah, I think intersectionality and intersectional feminism will help in that sense.
To be more compassionate towards one another.
Mm-hmm. To have more empathy towards people that aren't like you, because not everybody's the same.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to see how different races help each other, right? And not just accepting it, but just understand intersectionality will really make a change in people's perspective.
I mean, especially in Malaysia, we have different races and we have different kind of thinking.
And we do have a good foundation sort of laid out because of how multicultural we are. But as Shiva said, there's always room for improvement for sure.
How our education system work in Malaysia is Chinese primary school and we have Tamil primary school, so we are like somehow like separated in a way. So I think like what you say, there are rooms for improvement to utilize intersectionality in Malaysia.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the day that when it's fully utilized in Malaysia, you know, like now that we have talked about the concept of intersectionality, let's talk about women's rights. So feminism is women's rights, and yeah, you know, women's rights is basic human rights, all that. What is the gap on women's rights? I think that a lot of people think that it's overrated and think that the movement is unnecessary, you know. But what do you guys think? Because you all know that is untrue, right?
So that's actually a really good question. Well, like maybe before I answer, I want to know like what you guys think about, you know, like what women's rights include, because people often like assume that, yeah, you know, it's just basic human rights, but is it really? So what do you guys think?
You know, I think that going back to, because I heard a lot of people around me that would say that it's overrated and the movement is unnecessary. Going back to that, I feel like in Malaysia, there's like, you can see that there's only 18% of women in the ministerial position, right? And every 100 ringgit men earn, women only get 93 ringgit. And that is like a statistic from last year. Yeah. And there's only like 36% of women and 17% of men of the whole population that is facing sexual harassment now in Malaysia. And you can see like labor forces, technical and professional workers, women are still less than men. So how can this movement be overrated and unnecessary? You see what I mean? And sometimes it's not about if they can do it or not, like given that maybe women are less muscular or more emotional, but if they are given the chance or opportunity to be seen with their capabilities before even being stereotyped as being not suited for the job, I think that, you know, some of them can do as good as men or better. I don't know. Same applies for men, you know, for jobs that are unofficially classified as suits for women, right?
Yeah. So I think like in order to sort of talk about this more, we have to kind of talk about the basic human rights aspect of it as well. So what are basic human rights? You know, essentially it is the right to live free from violence and discrimination. It is, you know, to enjoy the highest possible standard of physical and mental health, to be educated, yes, to own property, to vote, to earn equal wage. And while some of these basic human rights are being fulfilled, there are still so many discrepancies, and there are a lot of women's rights, or rather, you know, basic human rights still being violated today, including gender inequality, gender-based violence, sexual violence and harassment, workplace discrimination. And, you know, in some countries, girls aren't allowed to have proper education, and there's, you know, there's always this issue of poor healthcare as well. And so there's this question of, you know, if we say human rights are women's rights, then why are there still so many inconsistencies? Why are there still so many basic human rights being violated on the basis of gender? In fact, I saw this thing, the World Economic Forum put out that it would take another century before true gender equality becomes reality, and to think that, you know, it would take that long before all of these basic human rights are 100% fulfilled, it's just like, it's crazy to think about. And, you know, as you said, Summer, you know, we've been fighting the same fight for so long, and we've achieved so much throughout all the waves of feminism, as Shiva mentioned earlier, but there are still so many inconsistencies. And I think in some ways people are, you know, like sort of desensitized to the issues just because it's been going on for a really
exactly,
right? And it's hard for people, it's also hard for people to back a movement that they cannot personally relate to, and that they have not, like, you know, explicitly like lived through. And to some people these are just, you know, jargons. You know, it goes back to being properly educated as well on feminism, and especially intersectional feminism, as we keep mentioning, because at the end of the day, it's the people with the most intersections in their life that face these inequalities and face the consequences of these violations. So yeah, definitely like a lack of education, and people being desensitized to it does sort of put a cap on women's rights.
I think just to kind of go back to the fact about like how people say like women fighting for basically their basic rights is so overrated, when like, okay, I wouldn't be having to fight for my basic human rights if I wasn't going through this whole array of problems or rights that I do not actually have. So I think it's just a bit, I don't know, insensitive is not even the right word for people to say it's so overrated. Honestly, like.
I think that if never fight for women's rights like long before these years, maybe there wouldn't be a woman president somewhere in other countries like New Zealand, you know. So fighting for it is just, it's a one step ahead, you know. People shouldn't just sit there and wait. Let's make a difference, right?
And fighting for women's rights benefits not only women, benefits everybody.
Yes.
Society. Like, it's not just one gender that benefits from it. It's a whole global thing. That's the whole point of feminism. Like, we fight for equality for everyone and not one specific gender.
So the misconception about feminism is like people think that it's all about women, but it's also about men, right? Like the topic about toxic masculinity and other labels, like I'm not like other girls and pick me girls. I'm curious, like what started all of these labels?
Oh, okay. I think in general, just to have a general theme, I think I have to say we have to blame on the patriarchy. But like, okay, no, not gonna lie, like these are. It's true, we live in a very patriarchal society which has truly caused so many problems, and I think this is all like, it's kind of stemmed from that. But like I'm not like other girls and pick me girls and like toxic masculinity, all like very three different like labels that are kind of very rampant in social media these days. There's like a whole like Twitter thing about like tweet like a pick me girl or something, like a whole hashtag that's going crazy. But like basically I think the difference between, I'm not like other girls, but I'm just gonna call them like analogs because it's easier. You're not gonna judge me. Like analogs and girls are kind of like similar, but there's still like a distinction between the two, and it's important to note for like the sake of this conversation, basically. So analogs are girls that put themselves in like a pedestal, or if they basically kind of like detest femininity and they want to be like unique, or like I'm quirky because like I'm quirky and like and like they have this thing where like they first of all like comparing girls, which we do not stand, and they don't want to, in their minds they believe like they don't want to be a basic girl, and the definition of being a basic girl is like, you know, wearing makeup and putting heels on, and the thought of having another female or another woman doing that is just too much for them. They just like, no, you're very basic, like
I want to be unique, you know, I don't know, wear makeup.
And these motives is not actually like, they're not actually motivated to put women down for the sake of a man. It's just kind of, they just want to do that to seem cool and to seem I think it comes from this place where they feel like femininity is seen as weak or useless or inferior. So I think that in a way that's where they're coming from. I can never tell, I'm not actually analog, so I can't, you know, explain the inner workings of one. But I think a pick me girl kind of it's more focused on like in terms of relationship standards, and like they feel like the whole like low-key the whole identity is like built on this idea of having to look a certain way to fit male acceptance,
like
and
to pick me, you know.
Basically.
And like the thing between these two like labels that are really similar is basically this internalized misogyny, where they feel like I have to look a certain type of way so a man likes me,
will like you.
And like to a certain extent we can't actually blame these girls or these children for like, you know, for having these girly ideas or wanting to be refraining from these girly ideas, because from a young age we don't really consider what the child wants to play with or wants to like partake in. We are all girls are literally forced into this idea of like Disney princesses and makeup and cute dresses and like, and you have to like pink, and
if you are a boy you like blue.
Yes. And like, so you're kind of like forced into these ideas, and then when you kind of grow up and you question it, you want to outgrow it, you kind of like break out like you try to break out, and like the only way you feel you can break out away from this like character that was placed upon you is by being this type of girl that's like, I'm not gonna be basic, I'm not gonna be like one of those girls. So I think it's kind of the way it came about. And as for toxic masculinity, toxic masculinity is basically like this societal expectation that has been placed onto men, but also women in society in general.
They have to be manly. They cannot wear makeup. They cannot be emotional, you know?
Yeah. So basically the whole idea of toxic masculinity is like women or anyone that exhibits like feminine traits are considered weak. So crying is considered a women thing. Like, it's a weak, you don't do that. Men are strong, men are like providers. And then in a way, it's kind of built this ideal, like quote unquote, like what an ideal man is, who doesn't cry, he provides for the family, which again goes back to these like toxic gender norms that we're trying to break down. And it truly just doesn't benefit anybody in the long run, I feel.
Exactly. Like guys who wants to like express their emotions, they can't. They just feel pressured by doing it because of that.
Right? And it's like this idea of, you know, the rejecting of like the feminine or rejection of femininity, and I think that's where we see a lot of this like toxic masculinity stuff emerge, and misogyny as well, because like these systems hold very high and unrealistic ideals on men, you know. And you know, this is like what Shiva said as well, like mention not cry, mention not like, you know, show vulnerability, and like this societal pressure for men to be strong and brave. And like, you know, something that is often overlooked as well in the, you know, like the feminist movement sometimes, is that men are also negatively affected by, you know, this social system, despite them sort of having more power in it, you know. And it is important to the feminist movement because it is through these internalized societal ideals that, you know, they interact, communicate, and treat others, treat women, and treat, you know, people basically. And it is called toxic for a reason. I want to share this really nice quote from this psychologist really quickly. Unfortunately, I don't have the name up, but they said that, you know, we raise boys with the identity of rejecting the feminine, and then we get surprised when they don't see women as being fully human. And I think that quote, like, kind of, I don't know, for me, it really captures toxic masculinity and why it's important to sort of break that down, you know.
Kind of go off what Hessa and everybody has said, like these ideals like kind of stem from this, basically this idea of toxic masculinity and all these labels have stemmed from people placing a certain individual, certain gender, certain like socio-economic status and race on a pedestal, and everybody trying their best to reach that ideal. And for example, this started off with having a white man and male white man, straight white man being the ideal, and everybody's trying to compete to reach to that level. And in the process of trying to compete to that level and failing, because the reality is we don't all have the same privilege or same opportunities, and that causes toxic masculinity, and I'm like other girls and pick me girls, like it all kind of stems from one place in a way.
Thank you for your insightful inputs. I believe the audiences now have a better understanding about the labels. So speaking about societal expectations on the behaviors that is expected on different gender, like men are expected to be strong, and whereas like women are perceived to be like weaker. So as a result, it caused that majority of the victim for sexual harassment are women. So with the tabling of the sexual harassment bill being delayed, would you mind giving the audiences a heads up on what is sexual harassment and to what extent?
Okay, well, man, should be a whole podcast on itself. It's going to take me a while. It's going to take me a while. But okay, to break down what sexual harassment is, can we first talk about like what is actually consent? And I think in to do research, I was kind of like reading up on things, and I think like Red Talk, basically, sorry. They kind of put consent in a very like precise way, and it has 5 terms, which means consent has to be something that's voluntary, clear, which means explicitly said, ongoing, between the two participants that are to engage in a sexual activity, and the person that is engaging in a sexual activity or act should not be emancipated by drugs or alcohol. They shouldn't be falling asleep. They have to be of sane mind and body when they're giving their consent. They have to be 100% present and able to give and make an informed decision. So they have to give their consent, which then brings me to this whole conversation about like, what about implied consent? Is that not a form of consent? No, guys, this is not a form of consent. Like, this is not some archaic movie stereotype when, like, you know, in the movie they're like, yeah,
exactly.
when women say no, they mean yes. No, when they say no, they mean no. When we say
no.
Like,
but they have a thinking. They think, oh, when woman says no, she means yes. Like the more she says no, then yes.
Yeah, yes,
Exactly.
that's
It's
exactly.
basically unwelcome sexual
Problematic.
behavior, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, they
My
even take
lord.
gender out of the conversation. Like, if anybody says no, they mean no. We do not mean yes. Like, don't get that twisted. Like, when it comes to consent, like, there should not be any form of hesitance, silence, ambiguity, non-responding. Like, okay, if you ever experience anything like that, just take it as a sign, as a no, and just leave. Okay, you can't equate that to consent. And in the conversation of like implicit consent, like, if I were to give you an example, like, let's just say we're both in a club, okay, and both of you have alcohol in your system, and the girl is kind of drunk. You can tell she's obviously evidently drunk, and she looks at you and she gives you this whole look, and do you think like this vibe, this star-crossed lovers like look is like some sort of like some sort
I'm
of
giving
like,
you consent to touch me.
yeah, some sort of consent to touch you to have
No.
You happen to be a dude that like was in the presence of her like visual pathway.
You were in the way.
Yeah, you're in the way.
Exactly.
Like, it does not mean that she's saying yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to really keep in mind. So like, important note, there should not be any room for doubt or assumption. Okay, always clarify by asking, and if you fail to do that, you have officially acted upon sexual harassment or sexual assault. So please keep that in mind. And as mentioned before, coercion, if somebody isn't voluntarily being like, yeah, let's do it, and you have to repeatedly like badge them into having sexual act with you, that is literally a form of sexual assault. Like, and this applies to all forms of relationships, romantic, any forms, like hookups, it applies. No one needs to do anything they don't want to be doing. Like, they don't owe you anything, by the way.
Yeah. Other than the obvious one, like, you know, like rape, like touch and all of that, I feel like people tend to like look past on less obvious things that they may think it's okay because of the implied consent, right? Like, but it's never okay. It can like make a huge impact on the victim.
Yes.
You know, like unwanted catcalls, sexual gestures or expressions, you know, elevator eyes, stares. Like, you have no right. That's wrong. And people think it's okay because it's not physical, you know, it's just a brief moment, but it like haunts the victim for God knows how long they live, you know?
Really can.
Yeah. So last thing for consent before I end my whole rant about consent, okay? And the person in a sexual encounter has the right to withdraw their consent at any point in time. People can change their minds. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I agree to make out with you, that means I agree to have sex with you. Like, you can say no, or he can say no. Like, they can say no at any point in time. So the mantra for consent, it has to be clear, ongoing, coherent, and voluntary. Like, keep that in mind. And I think there's no doubt about it, about like, there's no room for like varying opinions of what comes down to what consent is. Basically, like, nah, I don't want to hear it. No. Now we got consent out of the way. Now let's get to sexual harassment. What is it? Okay.
After all that,
we're here now. So basically, what Summer said is actually like 100%. Like, Girl Up had the opportunity of collaborating with Awam for the sexual harassment bill, and from that we had like we got to learn a lot about sexual harassment, and what like the definition we got from them was definitely like, fundamentally they believe like sexual harassment is the act of unwelcome, non-consensual sexual advances, whether it be requests, verbal, online, physical, non-verbal, visual, psychological, like that is all a form of sexual harassment. And basically it's a type of conduct that has an impact on someone's general well-being. The perpetrator creates a scary, intimidating, offensive environment for the survivor in terms of work, school, community, living environment. It's basically when a person believes they can use the position of power that they have to take away someone else's autonomy and their power. And sexual harassment and any other form of gender-based violence are often related, or a combination of power imbalance, privilege, and permission. And another thing to note, I feel like this is really, really important. You often hear cases about how like women were sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, but men do experience the same thing as well. And the reason why we don't actually hear it or it's not reported as much is because, again, we live in a very patriarchal society that has very much ingrained ideas of toxic masculinity. And again, toxic masculinity deems women or feminine traits to be weak or inferior, which also leads to men feeling like men who exhibit these traits or women who challenge the idea like, oh, they're afraid to come up, and they feel like sexual harassment is a feminine problem. It's a women problem. Only women get sexually harassed. Oh, I wonder why that's a problem. And only mostly women get sexually harassed. So men who are victims.
Shiva on fire.
Yes.
Men who are
fire, you know.
I'm so bad. Like, okay. And men who are victims, they're afraid to come up and report it. And when they do, people are like, I bet you enjoyed it. Like, why are you reporting it? I bet like you should be lucky you had that experience, but like that's not the case, and you're even more afraid, and like they don't want to come up about it, especially if the perpetrator was a woman. Harassment is a woman's problem.
Speaking about cases, right? Like in terms of minimizing it, have you guys seen the wrong way of like people asking either women to dress more or bring pepper spray or not go out at night, not go out alone, just to minimize sexual harassment? Have you guys been through that?
That one is like kind of a victim blaming mentality there.
Yes,
exactly. That's kind of something like running away from the problem, right? Like what she was saying, the problem. We should actually solve it by like educating our next generation, educating our kids to not do what is considered as sexual harassment, rather than, hey, dress more, you know, bring pepper spray just to protect yourself. Like, I understand that parents worry about their kids, but it's time to educate the next generation to change things up to solve the issue. And as victims, we shouldn't just sit here and normalize the problem, thinking that it is what it is. It's, you know, it's their eyes, it's their hands. They can do whatever they want. We can't control it. But like what Yili said, this leads to victim blaming. Like maybe making people to think that it's the victim's fault, like for being harassed, and we should dress more. But rather than doing that, you know, we should fight for it by just, you know, educating the next generation, doing something like partnering with Awam. That's one step ahead, right?
Back to the speakers. Do you think the education system in Malaysia is adequate for this?
No.
No. Okay. Well, we don't have we don't have a proper like structured like sex ed in schools or in like places of education. Like we don't learn about consent, and even if we do learn about sex ed, we don't. It's like it's very like divided. Like it's very like, okay, you learn it in biology. Okay, we learn about sexual reproduction, but we don't learn about like consent. And then you learn it like, for example, maybe in religious classes. Okay, so it's very like broken down. So you don't learn like the in betweens of everything, and it's very like, so there's no coherent way of learning consent unless you go out there and you actually put yourself in positions where you have to learn what consent is, what sexual harassment is, and you avoid doing such things, you know?
Yeah, like how are we supposed to, you know, teach the children or like teach anyone about sexual harassment, consent, and all these like different layers to it without having a comprehensive sex education sort of like curriculum in schools, you know?
Yeah. And also, aside from like education, I feel like as a society, we need to do better. Like we need to change. We need to be providing spaces whereby like survivors feel safe to come forward to get the justice they deserve. And as progressive as Malaysia is, like we're still very deep within our collectivistic culture where we're like, we want to conform within the group, we don't want to stand out, we don't want to bring dishonor to the family, which in a way in turn just kind of leads more to more victim blaming and like not actually questioning the motives of the perpetrator. Like the person who thought it was okay to take us, the survivors, autonomy and power and make them feel like inferior to them, like, you know, it's really just it's no longer like a gender issue, it's more like a social issue, I think.
So yeah, I believe that the education is more important to minimize the issues of sexual harassment in Malaysia. Yeah, even if the sexual harassment bill is passed, and even if we have like a very good law, like a perfect law to be there, it doesn't make any sense even it will not make any sense because the people are not educated to have the right mindset to
Exactly.
like how
If people don't understand it,
Mhm.
right?
yeah, like how to support the
Yeah.
victim instead of having the mentality of victim blaming. So moving on,
Yeah.
since we have mentioned the bill just now, so we all know that the bill is delayed due to the state of emergency that we are in. And so, what is your view on the issue of sexual harassment in Malaysia in the future?
Okay, well, I really hope in the future, like, we get this bill passed because I swear we need this in this country.
Yeah,
Like,
it's been
need it.
so long already, right?
yes,
on
it's
hold
been
for
like what,
so
over
long.
20 something years, if I'm not
Years.
Yeah, and
mistaken.
now that it's because of the state of emergency, I think it's probably delayed more because of the focus that the government here like is having to place on other sectors like healthcare system and economic because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I do hope like at some point we get it going. I understand like at the moment they may feel like it's not a priority, but there have been a lot of statistics that's come out, especially from like Women's Aid as and Awam, that have stated like the number of calls from survivors and victims of domestic abuse and sexual harassment has definitely
spiked up.
increased. Yes, over like MCO. And I think we do have laws in this country. We're not saying like this country doesn't have laws that protect survivors, but like there are some like gray areas and loopholes that, you know, allows for the perpetrator to get away. And I think this country, Malaysia, definitely needs like a standalone bill such as the sexual harassment bill to bring like big changes to the country. And for example, I have a few favorites about the bill. I think the first one being is like this sexual harassment bill has a very clear definition of what sexual harassment is, and like I'm gonna read out like what it is. Okay, so basically it states like any person who engages in unwelcomed conduct of sexual nature, which includes physical, verbal, non-verbal, visual, psychological, and online, with the intent to affect or violate the dignity of the person harassed, creating an intimidating, hostile, and degrading environment, which I think is really important. And the other laws didn't really specify it that way. And another thing I love about this law is how like this sexual harassment bill covers like regardless of time, place, and person. And I love the fact that they added the word person as opposed to like, you know, a specific gender like male or female, because in a way the sexual harassment bill will be able to protect us individuals from the LGBTQ plus community, which I feel like in the past, if they were to go to the police, they would go to possibly could go to prison because of them being part of the community itself, which is absolutely insane. And another thing I like about the bill is the fact that this bill mandates and makes sure all organizations has to have a sexual harassment policy that is effective and workable, which means like any organization that does not have this type of a bill, this type of a policy within the organization can be brought to court for investigation, which I think is really, really important, because in the past, I don't think a lot of organizations have this and can also lead to like workplace sexual harassment as well.
And I think like the way that the bill is structured too, it provides like easier access to, you know, gaining justice, you know, like a few things are like the cases will be assessed in tribunals, which are, you know, they're known to be more effective and like they have less procedures and formalities. And then it also, yeah, like I said, it makes it more accessible, makes justice more accessible by, you know, like not making it mandatory for survivors to have legal representatives at the tribunals. And also another way is that it's about the what was it called, the burden of proof. So before, the burden of proof is beyond reasonable doubt, which means that the survivor has to prove that the accused is 100% guilty. And, you know, obviously that's very problematic, because like just the nature of sexual harassment itself, it's such that it often leaves like no evidence, you know. But now with the new bill, the burden of proof is on a balance of probability, which means that the survivor has to be at least 51%, right? Yeah, 51% sure that the accused is guilty. So yeah, like it just provides a lot of ways for justice to be served and makes it very accessible and easy as well for survivors.
Yeah.
Touching on what Shiva said just now, that the cases have spiked last year because of MCO. To be honest, it's actually a very crucial moment for us to pass the bill ASAP, because I think it is as important as a lot of crises that we are facing right now during this pandemic. And one day the bill is not passed, the issue of sexual harassment in Malaysia will get worse.
Yeah, like especially now during MCO, a lot of people are staying at home, so it kind of put them in a greater risk to sexual harassment. So I agree with what you say just now. So the bill is very.
That was an insightful session that we had about feminism, and I believe that so much more. We have so much more to discuss about this.
Definitely.
Here we have some questions from the audience, and the first question we have is, who do you guys aspire to be like?
Oh man.
I know this question again.
God. Why y'all do this to us?
So like Shiva and I,
So much so related to the topic.
we always get these like questions, and we're like, I don't know. We try to like emulate. We want to like try to emulate.
Maybe I can start first, and then
feminists as possible.
Maybe I can start. But I feel like everyone has kind of the same answer. Probably the person that I aspire to be like would be my mom, because she's very right. She's like a very strong, independent woman.
Mom, if you are watching this, I love you.
She's trying to get brownie points right there. She knows.
She knows what she's doing.
Mom's gonna watch this. She's gonna cry right now with tissues. Yeah, she's like an independent, single mom. You know, so she's very strong in my eyes, and I want to be like her one day. And she would give everything to me that she can possibly give. So I aspire to be like her. Mom, hi.
Oh God. Oh man. Okay.
Shiva, what do you think?
Okay, all right. I think like I have a few people that I aspire to be, and I feel like they all kind of feed into like my very multicultural self chain. But I think I think in general, I think I would definitely be inspired or aspire to be like my mom and her siblings. I was still
Everyone says their mom. Everyone says their mom.
But no, for real, like okay, like my mom has 4 sisters, including herself. So like I grew up in a family that had a lot of like very dominant, very strong female like figures, and they all acted as like mothers to me in a way. Like they all like, so a bit of all their personalities are within me, I like to think. So I think they all bring a certain degree of perspective, and they've all gone through different things, and I think that's something that I would like to.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would like to think so much, but I would like to like gain all their strengths and like move forward in this world. And obviously like I want to use their perspective and be able to advocate for women, like what we do.
You are doing it in Girl Up Club.
I love that.
Yeah, I believe what like you guys are doing now in the Girl Up Club, it will bring like a butterfly effect, and in the long run it will make a very huge impact. Going back to Hessa, so who do you aspire to be like?
Aspire to be like.
You know what? At this point, it's my mom. It's my mom. Hi, mom.
Hi.
No, it's always been my mom. Okay, we've been doing this. It's always been my mom. But like, I mean, just like also what Shiva said as well, like my mom also has like, she has like more sisters. Like she has one brother, and like everyone else are like sisters. And there's a lot of like girls in our family, in that side of the family. And so like, we're very much like, like kind of like trying to move past these sort of like traditional like stuck mindset, and like we're always doing the most, in the best way possible, and so like definitely like that has held like a lot of influence in my life as well, because of like that girl power,
power.
Yes. So you know what, my mom, love you, mom.
Really, your mom too?
Yeah, I want to. I want to be like my mom too, because I mean, although she's a housewife, she really brings a lot of love to our family. She takes care of us, and I would say that I'm very blessed because I mean, she is one of the reasons why I have a very happy family now. And I love her, and I aspire to be like her when I have a child, or Don't laugh. I'm
Oh.
being very serious now. I mean, like it makes it inspires me to take care of the emotional side of my children when I have children. And apart from my mom, because since like everyone says that we aspire to be like our mom, right? I'm going to add something different here.
Okay,
Another person. So in my family life, I would like to be like my mom, but in my working life, I would like to be like an activist that I really look up to. Her name is Karen Lai, and she is an activist working in the NGO that I'm interning now. And she is the person who taught me the concept of intersectionality. And she's very confident, and she's very knowledgeable, and she's very brave. And yeah, so I aspire to
She'll be watching this and crying.
Oh, I will. Hi, Karen. Yeah. Okay. So in my home life, I would aspire to be like my mom, and in my working life, I aspire to be like Miss Karen. Yeah. So that's all from me. And so moving on, there's another question from the floor. So to Shiva and Hessa, how to be confident speakers like you both? Is there any tips and tricks?
Confidence? What do you mean?
I don't see it.
Stop, guys.
No, like I don't know about confidence, guys. I don't think I would say confidence. I would just say more passionate. Like
Yes, I was just thanks for stealing my point, girl. Like
I'm sorry.
No, no.
Okay. The same mind. Like okay, but no, I think truly like being part of Girl Up and advocating for something I'm so super passionate about. I think that gives me the voice, and having women and allies and other people advocating for similar things for me, for the benefit of us, and as we discussed the many waves of feminism of women that fought for us, I think that is what gives me the confidence to like be here today and to be part of this conversation and to always be part of this conversation. So yeah.
And like just having that, like it's the same for me, like, you know, ever since I joined Girl Up, I think that it has definitely made me more for lack of better words, confident enough to, you know, speak up on issues and sort of like challenge these very set ways that we've been like taught to function as, you know. And it's this like the Girl Up community as well is very supportive, and they're always uplifting each other and everyone, you know. So that I think also helps, having that like support from people who are like-minded. It's like yes.
Yeah,
we love to see it.
Okay, so I think so after having an insightful discussion on girl power, we have come to an end for this episode of Keeping Up with the Taylorians podcast. So before wrapping up, we would like to invite Taylor's Girl Up once again to give their last few words to our audiences. So let's welcome Taylor's Girl Up.
Yay!
Okay, I mean, all right. Before that, let me just give you a brief intro of what Taylor's Girl Up stands for.
Some facts, girl.
Just giving some facts. Facts only up in here. All right. Okay. So basically, Taylor's Girl Up is a club under the United Nations, and our goal in particular strives to bring light to the local community struggles with discrimination, as well as to fight for equality. And Taylor's Girl Up does share similar viewpoints as Girl Up International Movement, which is to empower girls with skills, rights to access and opportunities. And we do so by organizing events by like fundraising, storytelling, and employing methods of advocacy to achieve gender equality and end gender violence, achieve education for all, and use STEM for social good, and to ensure equality in all fields of sports. So basically, we hope to tackle discriminative issues head on and empower individuals from all genders in Malaysia and around the world. And as if Hessa and I have not been praising Girl Up like crazy this whole podcast, but today, like, I think this club, we have so many different people, different perspectives, but we come together with like the one similar mission, which is to advocate for people that can't advocate for themselves, and to use our points of privilege to benefit the better good, I would say. And we're just so supportive, and the vibes, man, the vibes are
immaculate.
Like
they're immaculate.
A+. You cannot match those vibes anywhere. So So yeah, if you wanna join our club and be a part of the fight and be part of such stimulating conversations as the ones we had today, join Girl Up and follow us on our Instagram and Twitter at Taylor's Girl Up. Just subtle flex and plug. Okay,
I mean, if you've made it this far into the podcast, you might
honestly,
you might as well.
Yes, I better see y'all, okay? And then DM us and be like, I'm from the podcast. I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's all from Girl Up. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
So thank you, Shiva and Hessa, for joining us. I believe that after this podcast, you'll be receiving a lot of DMs saying that, hi Hessa, hi Shiva, you're so confident. Can I join your kids? Go up. Yeah. and so it was a pleasure to have both of you as our speakers for the day, and we are definitely looking forward to have more collaborations and discussion on girl power in the future.
Yeah.
So to our audiences, to follow our Instagram page at Taylor's Uni SC and get yourself updated on events, news, and activities happening in Taylor's.
You can also find us on Facebook. Just type in Taylor's University Student Council and catch up on all our future podcast episodes and events. And also make sure to also like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notification bell to our YouTube channel.
All right, people, that's all for our podcast today.
Thank you for tuning in, and we will be right back with more episode on Keeping Up with the Taylorians. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and bye.
Bye.
Bye.